Welcome, everybody. Welcome and welcome back. If it's not your first Urban Talk with us, oh, I see a couple of familiar faces in the room. It's always nice to see some of our usual participants. Thank you so much for coming week after week. We really appreciate this. And if you're new, welcome to the Urban Talk community. We have a very special talk about urban mobility and urban transport for you today. This talk is going to be available in multiple languages. So if you want to be able to follow everything, make sure you click on the globe icon that at the bottom of your Zoom window and join your preferred language channel. We have English, we have Ukrainian, we have Albanian, and we have Russian today. So make sure to join the right channel if you want to follow the questions if they're asked in another language than the one you speak. I think we are already quite a few people, so without further ado, I'll give it to Aditi and we can start. Enjoy the talk.
Thanks, Darini. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And welcome to our Urban Talks webinar on transforming urban mobility, where we explore how to advance safe and sustainable transport solutions. I'm Aditi Soni, a service designer working with the UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub's innovation team, and I will be the moderator for today's session. So I will walk you through the agenda, walk you through the speakers' discussions, and we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A. Before we begin, and before I go into the details, as Darini suggested, I just want to remind everyone that we have language interpretation, which is available in Ukrainian, Albanian, Russian, and English. You can find the button to pick the language on the bottom right of the bottom panel. So if you can just pick whichever language is suitable for you, we can kick off soon. Okay, so back to the talk. As many of us know, transportation is much more than just getting people from point A to point B. It's truly the lifeblood of our cities, shaping how we live, work, connect with one another, communicate, commute, everything. The way we design and manage how people move can significantly impact economic growth, social inclusion, and the overall well-being of the citizens living in a certain urban space. Uh, but as our cities are growing and changing, so are the demands on our transport infrastructure. We're facing urgent challenges like how to reduce congestion, how to cut down emissions, and ensure that everyone, regardless of their age, gender, or mobility needs, can move safely and efficiently through urban spaces. Transforming urban mobility is not just about solving today's problems, but about reimagining what cities can be in the future. It can be greener, more inclusive, more people centered, and that's what we are here to talk about. Today, we are joined by two incredible experts who are leading the way in this transformation. We have with us Arlinda Rushad Sadiku, who is the technical lead on urban transformation at UNDP Kosovo, who will share how her team is working on exploring public transport and prioritizing women's safety in Pristina. And we're also joined by Bronwyn Thornton, the CEO of the Walk 21 Foundation, who has been a passionate advocate for walkable cities and will discuss how walking can be a catalyst for healthier and more sustainable urban spaces. As for the overall agenda, we will begin with Arlinda's presentation about her work in Pristina, followed by a presentation from Bronwyn sharing us about what Walk 21 Foundation does and some learnings from the same. Soon after, I will moderate a discussion with our panelists where we will exchange some thoughts around different topics, and then we will leave some time for Q&A from the audience towards the end. As the talk progresses, we request you to please drop your questions in the chat, and we will pick them up during the Q&A session. I hope everything is clear, and since we have a really detailed agenda, I will now pass it on to our first speaker, Arlinda Rushad Sadiku. So Arlinda is a dedicated professional and with extensive experience in sustainable urban development, urban transformation, mobility, and innovative project management, using approaches like deep co-design and AI platforms. Known for her strategic thinking, Arlinda has led transformative urban projects in Kosovo and North Macedonia, focusing on sustainable transport, nature-based solutions, and digital innovation. As part of UNDP Kosovo, she has spearheaded impactful programs like the City Experiment Fund, leveraging participatory, community based designs. Her expertise includes integrating green and digital solutions for urban resilience and leading projects like the Urban Transformation Initiative with the municipality of Pristina, including mobility innovations like bus route prioritization. A strong advocate for gender inclusivity and social equity, she is also passionate about green building practices and decarbonization. Over to you, Arlinda. Please take us through some of your work and insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me and calling me an expert. I believe nobody can be called an expert without having 50 years of experience in one field. That's my technical view. I will just move on directly to the presentation since we don't have a lot of time, and I want to dwell into more policy, technical, and experience abstractions. So we know cities all over the world, they have a lot of challenges, which is air pollution, unreliable public transport, limited options for walking, cycling, and all that. So we all know this, and there is not a single city or municipality in the world that doesn't have at least one of these problems, or they have these problems, but from scale 1 to 10, maybe it's 1, but at least there is some kind of challenge. Or if there is not a challenge that is immediately seen or it's immediately felt, there are underlying issues and problems. In order to reduce air pollution, cities all over the world are trying to build strategies aimed at reducing air pollution, meaning improving public transport and environment, implementing renewable energy sources, encouraging green building practices, and all that. But here, what we are today is talk about more about Pristina's challenges. Pristina is the capital city. It has around 200 and more inhabitants. Is facing significant challenges due to rapid urbanization. Its urban area grew 3 times during the past 30 years, which is a lot for a single municipality to handle on. And this has brought a lot of traffic congestion and air pollution. Also to lead into this, the daily immigration and yearly immigration and weekly immigration brings a lot pressure and issues with existing transport infrastructure. The existing transport infrastructure cannot cope with all these problems. We have also the dependency on cars, and it's not just political policy issue or infrastructural issue, it's also about social behavior. We are used to have using cars for going for everywhere, to school, to everywhere. So this brings additional layers of challenges for the city. Why is the city dependent only on has a high dependency on cars? Is because there is a lack of alternative transport options. There are not a lot of very few cycling and walking paths. There are, but there are a lot of issues with that. There are cars parked in the road. In the areas for pedestrians, limited residence mobility options, absence of enforcing walkability, car dependency, and all that. Also, there is enhancing public transport system, reducing congestion, and promoting sustainable transport options have been a crucial part of for the political agenda of the municipality. But they need, I will talk for this on other slides, but is bringing a huge problem about healthier urban environment in the city. As part of the City Experiment Fund and cooperation and collaboration with Municipality of Pristina, we've been discussing for a while now how to bring innovative solution for safer cities, for improving, overcoming traffic congestion, and also making transport as a reliable modality. We've been thinking about testing new transportation technologies, implementing smart traffic management systems, and promoting active transportation options. The idea is that implementing smart traffic management system was to optimize traffic flow, reduce delays, and enhance safety for all road users. Then during the survey, during the workshops, during the portfolio development, the portfolio creation, deep listening with the citizens and inhabitants and communities and all that, we came to identify that the municipality has a lot of issues as long as it concerns with walkability, cycling, transport, cars, and all that. Existing infrastructure, policies, financial limitations, and all that. But they needed a solution that is innovative and it's not siloed, it's interconnected in between all these problems, and the municipality can test it and can see and can use it for future investments and future strategy, and also in the creation of their urban development plans and integrating the transport and mobility as a crucial part of these urban development plans. So the primary goal of, we came into a solution which is called bus prioritization options, which means that it's prioritizing bus routes in order to make the transport more efficient. The idea, the goal was to create sustainable solutions for urban mobility, not just for Pristina, but also for the neighboring urban areas like Fushkosovo and Obilic, because we also see the last 20 years of urban agglomeration. So Pristina has become one area, built one area with the neighboring cities. So this also creates additional challenges, additional problems, and additional need for capital investments. So in order to have a more efficiency and reliable transport approach, we started analyzing congestion patterns, which is very important. We analyzed, because in the beginning we thought to do this for the whole urban routes, but because there were a lot and we couldn't do, and we also went and identified two main bus routes, which were the most congested one and the longest and the most used one. So we went and analyzed congestion patterns, meaning that we analyzed the traveler patterns all day long for 2 weeks. We used 1 week, which is a good sunny weather, and then 1 week when it's rainy weather, because it's very important that we saw different patterns, use patterns, traveler patterns when it was rainy and different when it was sunny, and because we have this kind of social fear from rain. We are not like, okay. And also understanding these patterns help us identify key areas of intervention, because we didn't go and analyze only traveler congestion, but also bus congestion. And what we understood is that, for example, there are areas in the city that no bus route goes around. There are areas that have no options for mobility at all. And we have areas or streets that up to 7 routes a day pass through that urban corridor, which is a huge discrepancy, not just socially, not just community-based, but also gender-based, because you have parents that need to take their children to school, and then you have young girls that need to go to faculty or to work. And so it's very hard if you don't have a car or if you don't have any options to that. And you have, and at the end of the day, you end up taking a taxi cab. So the focus was developing and testing these solutions. Why bus priority? First of all, because municipality of Pristina and other municipalities and Kosovo in general, they have been trying to develop national and local policies. Pristina has a sustainable urban mobility plan developed from 2019. But this was specifically done just to test out if customized solution would enhance the transport mobility, and also to feed in the future sustainable transport and mobility agenda of Pristina, because Pristina is working on some improvements and also some major capital investments. I will talk about that. We have also understood that bus priority measures can significantly reduce car dependency, car congestion, and also bring to slightly promote a more efficient transportation benefit network. It's not just about going from A to B, as Darini said in the beginning. It's more about access to jobs, education, economic opportunities. Reliable public transport ensures not just going from A to B, but also all the shops around one specific corridor have access to loading and uploading, unloading, and or specific community has access to a specific park or bus stop, or etc. So I can babble all day long for this, the importance of this, but it's important to understand why we went through this solution. It's not, and as I said, it's not just access, it's not just economic benefit, it's not just that, it's also the environmental impact. As we said in the beginning, one of the biggest pollutant in Kosovo is the transport, is the cars. We have lately a lot of cars that are older that went into the border, and people are using them, and also meaning that offering a solution, a better green solution to inhabitants, is to have to prioritize buses, to prioritize the transport public system. It's not just using your personal vehicle because it's easier, but also creating a reliable transport system, not for those that don't have cars, for those that have mobility problems, for children, for pupils, and for young people. We went on and did an overview of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan for Pristina, and we saw that there are positive sides and also some limitations. The Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan for Pristina was among the first plans that were drafted in Kosovo, and it was the draft period took around 1 year, and we saw that it's very general and it needs deeper analysis and deeper feasibility studies for implementation, for a faster and more efficient, effective implementation. But despite limitations, there are some things that Pristina has already done, like improve the parking regulation, and they are planning for new buses. They're in a process of EBRD loan to buy around 30 new buses, which is very important and a huge investment and huge step for a municipality, even for a capital like Pristina. We have to also understand that there are financial limitations because the municipal level cannot undertake huger or a better capital investments, meaning buying more buses or buying more electrical buses and all that, due to taking loan limitations. A municipality can do many things, but still, if there is no political and institutional will from the national level to support these processes, it brings also challenges for the local governance. We have understood that it's not just financial problems with the transport mobility, but also its political will and also social behavior of the community. organizations like UNDP and other organizations can help and support with technical expertise and also to widespread the analysis and recommendations, but still it's up to the municipality to keep up with these measures that require support, that require drastic changes. For example, if a mayor would decide to do a bus-only lanes, it's a huge drastic measure. We also come to understand that if we do network optimization, e-ticketing, information system, these are easier to be done, and but still they need political backing. We went into built environment analysis, which meant to understand and examine Christina's current infrastructure to identify where are the challenges and where are the opportunities. We saw that there are corridors, a lot of corridors that allow for bus-only lanes. There also are a lot of corridors that are not being integrated to the bus routes, which are left around. So there is a huge urban perimeter discrepancy. We also saw that there are lane challenges. Some of the lanes can, not just lanes, but also the routes need to be changed. And we also saw that there are parking issues around the biggest corridors. And also there is a huge need for cycling lanes. We also saw that there are some limitations with traffic light management. But not that huge ones that cannot be overcome. We went also to analysis of these bus corridors, and then it's not some major news. Christina lacks dedicated bus lanes, and this reduces reliability. It means that when a bus doesn't have its own lane, it's going to be stuck in the traffic here and there. So without dedicated bus lanes, we came into conclusion we cannot create reliable we cannot create reliable public transport. If you can see, I see some comments or some questions. Should I move on or? Okay.
Yes, please move on. They are just anecdotes and points that you can look at after the presentation.
So the idea was not just to do this innovative approach, but also to integrate sustainability, meaning that to analyze all the green spaces, all the existing bike lanes, all existing municipal plans for eco-friendly bikes, to promote multimodal transit. The municipality has been working also with some other organizations and other companies and consultant companies to create a multimodal bus station and to integrate different type of bus routes, meaning big buses, small buses, to create this inner circle of bus route, and then integrate all these other routes with that route. So the idea was to integrate all these recommendations, all these plans, or all these other recommendations from other organizations into our analysis and on our proposal for bus-only lanes or bus corridors. We went also to analyze the traffic light management, or as we say it, prioritize bus routes or buses in traffic light. And we saw that the existing manual traffic light system has some limitations, and there is some kind of inability to prioritize buses at roundabouts, not just intersections. Because we have a few of big roundabouts, and the way how the roundabouts are built, there is some challenges of how to implement traffic light management system there. But we still went with a recommendation that there is a need for, and also potential for enhancing the efficiency of the bus routes through automated traffic light prioritization and to reduce delays, at least for these major bus routes 1 and 4, which, as I explained in the beginning, are the longest and the most congested ones. I'm sorry, this is twice. And our proposed bus priority measures were dedicated bus lanes, queue jumps, and bus stop enhancement, and of course, traffic light management system. Bus lane configuration and queue jumps. We proposed several options to the municipality, and these are just some of them. And one of them is, for example, how about we do a curbside bus lanes? It would be suitable for some of the corridors. We would also propose offside bus lanes, which allows for parking while prioritizing buses in some of the corridors. One of the biggest corridor was about creating a center running lane, which because the infrastructure and the way how that corridor was created, it allowed for that. We also proposed queue jumps in the areas where there is no spatial or very spatial limitation to create a bus only lane. And also, as part of the implementation of prioritization, traffic light prioritization, we went with option Opticom infrared system, but also went into assessing other ways and creating an action plan for the municipality and all that. Yes, I also mentioned this. I guess I went further into my presentation. We did a lot of stakeholder engagement. We did surveys with the community around these corridors, with users, with travelers in the buses. We analyzed passenger and bus patterns on hourly basis. We got a lot of feedback from municipality, from the public transport company, from the private companies that also circulate their buses and other stakeholders. We did an overview of short-term and long-term interventions and all that. Yes, as I mentioned in the beginning, the institutional cooperation was very important and is very important for many of the municipalities, and financial constraints create a mentality that not a certain solution cannot be implemented. It's not just it cannot be implemented, but it creates this mentality that no, we cannot do this because this costs a lot. So overcoming this kind of mentality and starting slow or small steps here and there can create improvements. And when these improvements are seen from the community and also from the technical people of the municipality itself, it can create a behavioral improvement. So I think it's very important to explain whenever we work with local governments or municipalities here and there that financial constraints are there, but are not, that cannot be overcome. Yes, I think I'm just 2 minutes over time. I think
Thank you so much.
Share. And
yes,
I didn't explain in the beginning, this is all just for this. I concentrated more on this bus priority plan, but we also work with other NGOs and with the municipality to understand the challenges of safety for girls using public transport, using parks and pedestrian areas. Where are areas where we lack light? Where are areas which bus routes are more perceived as more risky for girls, and which are areas for girls that they don't step at all, or for are not accessible as should be, and all that. So you can also ask me about that.
Thank you so much, Erlinda. I found it really fascinating how you started by telling us how listening played a big role in understanding what the citizens want, what different actors want, and how the current infrastructure affects their daily lives. Shows us that taking time to understand challenges really helps you move beyond like isolated, siloed approaches to more holistic solutions. It was also really nice to see that how the bus priority plan not just focuses on Pristina as being the main city, but also extends to neighboring cities and areas, expanding its impact. And of course, as a result, easing congestion and daily routines. I think another insightful thing was how you mapped the patterns of movement of traffic and vehicles based on weather and time. And I think these are certain insights that everybody knows, but it's always good to have it mapped to really see how it works in practice. And
Yes.
like you also mentioned, financing remains a universal concern across all kinds of projects that we do. But it's great to see that these efforts are still going on and that you're looking into execution and taking this forward. And really looking forward to picking this up a little bit more in our panel discussion. But for now, we will move on to the next topic. Before I do that, I just want to remind everybody to add their questions in the chat, so we make sure we have them ready when we move to the Q&A towards the end. Okay, so moving on to our next speaker for today, Bronwen Thornton. Bronwen is an international expert on walking and walkable communities, giving walking a voice on the international stage. As the CEO of Walk 21 Foundation, she works closely with agencies to address global challenges and ensure that walking is a part of the solutions, including climate crisis, road safety, public health. She leads the international conference series as well. She particularly likes to work through creative partnerships to inspire politicians and practitioners about the value of walking and to build momentum for investment by cities, national governments, and multilateral agencies. Over to you, Bronwen. Looking forward to hearing your insights and the work at Walk 21 Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditi, and hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you today. I'm really delighted to share some of the work that we're doing at Walk 21. And I really appreciated what Alinda has just shared with us. I was busy making so many notes, Alinda, because of the resonance with what you're saying and how we work. And I'm going to try and pick up some of those connections as I go through, particularly this intergovernmental relationship that you mentioned as well. But as it says on the tin, we are Walk 21, the foundation. We've been going now since the year 2000, running a conference globally and developing a whole range of products and resources to support more walking. My title today is Walking the Transformation Your City Needs. And very often when we think about our cities and the future, we don't think about, oh, just one second, I'll get the slides to work. No, are they working? There we go. We forget
Yes.
to think that walking isn't a new idea, which doesn't make it very attractive to the tech bros and the new inventors and all of these people who want to come up with high-tech solutions, because walking is a very analog, very fundamental solution. And as a result of that, when something shiny and big and new comes along with comfy seats and surround sound, or even without those things, we flock to it. And it comes with a lot of money and it occupies a lot of space. Now, we didn't have to have conversations about how are we going to accommodate the car? How are we going to convince people to come back to walking and cycling? How do we attract them to public transport? The car, as of itself, fueled by the motor industry and fueled by the shiny new and the future, has become ubiquitous in our communities. And what's happened as a result of that is that we've lost sight of walking. We've lost sight of and ignored the value and the fundamental fact that we are all people who are walking, and that walking is part of the way that we move and exist in our communities. And this space occupation, many of you will have probably seen this cartoon before. The car driver sitting there blaming the bike paths and the bus lanes for taking up all the space when they are already surrounded by more space than is their sort of personal space. But even when you look at a picture like this, which is a fantastic illustration of the way that car mobility has warped our perceptions of our time and our environments and our priority and our importance as human beings. We don't actually have pedestrians. We have bus passengers. We have people waiting at the bus stop, and we have a squeeze cyclist. But taking no shade on this, but once again, the pedestrian has been squeezed out. And this quality of the space, this allocation of space in our cities really comes home when you look at somebody walking in a car-size frame. This is a fantastic thing that a few people have done over time, but you realize how much space we've given up in our cities to motorization. And when you see somebody walking with a car space frame around them, now he's a lucky guy. He's outside his car and he can talk to the person walking next to him rather than. But we are really losing sight of the value of walking in our communities. But it's not just about the space, it's the quality of space. It's what that space invites us to do there. And the picture you saw at the beginning with the car on a motorway, in a big highway, big shiny car, it's the only thing that can happen in that space. Whereas at this scale, with this street, there are people walking, there are bicycles, there are plants, there's a market, there's someone going for a morning jog. This is actually a non-rainy day in the UK, and so many people are out enjoying the sunshine. It's really important, this quality of space, not just the provision of it. But I want to take a little step back, and this picks up on what Arlinda was saying about government relationships. And I just want to take a moment to look at the work we do, because at Walk 21, we work from a global perspective, right down to street level human experience, the actual lived experience on the street. But the importance of when you mentioned, Arlinda, that local governments, municipalities are responsible for trying to bring in these changes and to make these things happen, and they don't always get the support up to at the national level. It's very real. It's very real trying to build a bridge. For 20 years, people have asked me, why would national governments want to do walking? Walking's local, and I'm just like, yeah, but you can leverage financing, you can set priorities, you can make the relationships with the multilateral donors who can bring the funding in to deliver at street level. So I think it is really important to take a global perspective. And what we've been doing at Walk 21 is trying to build the ecosystem around the work that you're doing in the cities and in your communities and trying to shift the conversation. COVID definitely shifted the conversation. Since COVID, we've seen an incredible increase in attention for walking and cycling and increasing levels of changes on street level, but also in the policy framework. So I want to introduce you to the PATH. This is a group that we do, the Partnership for Active Travel and Health. That's the website there. You have to put in the dots just so I don't like the underlines. It gets harder to read. But pathforwalkingandcycling.com is an alliance that we have with the cycling groups and with others to try and bring the conversation into the climate agenda. So climate COP started today, I think, or this week, yesterday. I'm not there for the first time since Paris. And it's been amazing to watch walking get into the agenda at places like these global agendas. And we do a lot of work around that. But we also looked at the nationally determined contributions. These are up for renewal, right? So the nationally determined contributions, they not only have to create them, they're legally binding, but they also have to improve on them every 5 years. But when we looked at the NDCs, there were so few for walking or cycling. And then we thought, well, if we've got NDCs, some countries have national policies without a global commitment, and some have a global commitment without a national policy. So there's a real mismatch at all levels of government between what they need to do, what they say they're doing, and what the systems that they have in place to support that. And so we decided to come up with a template NDC, which we launched last year to support the translation of nationally determined contributions into better quality commitments at that global level for walking and cycling at the street level. And we've done some regional fact sheets so you can look up your region, find your country, understand what they've got. We've analyzed the policies, not just a tick box whether you have one, but is it good enough? Is it addressing the things that we know need to be addressed? And then we've just done a new compendium of case studies from all across the world, which is being launched. You're getting a little privy insight here. It's been launched next week at COP as part of a Transport Day programs and looking at how in countries, this is national level governments, implementing and doing something to support the 20 identified actions for walking and cycling all over the world. So that will be out next week. Keep an eye out for that. And we are certainly by no means see that as a defined finished product, but an evolving conversation about national commitments to walking. To translate that down into regional levels, Last week at the World Urban Forum, we launched the Pan-African Action Plan for Active Mobility, otherwise known as PAPAM, and that's the impact we're hoping it will have. At the same time, a week before, the PEP partnership, the Pan-European Master Plan for Walking, was approved by that partnership as well. So these are continental or regional planning that sets a framework for national governments to know what to do and how to do it, how to improve their policies, their places, and to support people to do more walking. So this is, we're building these frameworks, creating this ecosystem. And of course, then it comes down to city level work. And so we know what works inside policies. We've done that analysis and we've taken that into the national government and the regional levels. And this piece of work we did with EIT Urban Mobility was looking at that at city level. And we've worked with Tirana, Albania. You'll hear more about Tirana during my talk. But we've worked with Tirana and they now have a walking strategy as well. And some other projects to keep an eye on to continue learning and understanding how we can improve our policy frameworks and embed good practices, because we can't just do one-off projects. We have to keep building and embedding and professionalizing the whole framework of how we approach walking and walkability in our communities. And when you think back to that picture of that car and how that just evolved and we all went for that, one of the issues that people came to us with was we don't have any data. We don't know what the numbers are. Very often, the only data people had was how many people were dying in road safety crashes. And it's a very sad statistic to have to respond to. But it's very easy. I think Albania is registering 284 cars a day at the moment. That is a lot of cars every single day. And these are numbers that government knows. So these are numbers that government is responding to. So we have to make sure that we have the numbers and the data and the policy frameworks so that governments can respond differently and so that communities can respond differently as well. So our 8 steps to walkable cities is a framework of translating what we understand at policy level, how to build a plan, how to assess the environment, how to engage the citizens, and how to bring them all together, because the planning is really critical in terms of connecting all the different people who have an impact on walking into the same idea, and then investing and having some showcase investments to translate that into action on the street. Active cities, I think, Darini, this is where you actually found me to come and be part of this conversation. And the Active Cities project, which we're doing with Interreg North Sea, we're doing with a number of cities in that region. And this is literally translating everything we've learned and developed over the years into citizen-led engagement and change on the street, and creating those livable human-scale streets for people to participate in. And we're working in 8 cities. And of those 8 cities, 7 of them were doing a cycling project and 1 was doing a walking project until we started talking to them. And now 6 of them are doing walking projects and 2 of them are doing cycling projects. Because very often people, even in professional contexts, have not sort of thought or listened or heard about the importance of walking. And what's happening in the Active Cities project is the work that we do with our walkability app. So this is an opportunity for people. It's available in the app, Google and Apple and all the other, sort of app stores for your phone. And you can go out and we collect the human experience on street. So when people measure satisfaction with a service, we measure the satisfaction of the comfort of the bus or the frequency of a timetable, or, like every time you do something online, tell us how happy were you with this experience. But we don't invite people's experience of their on-street experience. And so this app is enabling people to say, this is how I feel in this environment. It's not asking them to be technicians. It's asking us to tell us their human experience, and so that we can identify clusters where there are concerns. You can see on this map some bright red dots, some green dots, which are the more positive areas where people like to walk. And it takes, for example, I'll come explain why this app is so important. This is a classic street. I think this is in Bremen in Germany. Very typical, cars parked all over the footpath, clear space down the middle for the street for cars to pass through. It's technically possible to walk down that street, but who would let their child walk to school down that street, right? There's no comfort. When we ask about how do we communicate what is the priority, how do we communicate who we care about in our communities? And we all do this individually as well. I mean, anyone who owns a car has probably parked like this at some point in time because of the inevitability of the nature of the dynamic. But we have to make different choices for the different people in our communities. This is that street now. And you can't imagine how fraught this process was to give those children a wide, not very wide actually, just a standard footpath, but without a car for them to enable them to walk to school. You'd think you were cutting off someone's leg, asking them to park their car somewhere else. But if we don't start communicating the importance and that priority by making these changes and putting in these restrictions, then we aren't going to get that cultural shift amongst our citizens that helps them understand the value of walking as well. Now, the reason I want to come back to this picture is because this is another street where children have walked to school and they've made some interventions. But the difference here is that you can see in the top before, they evaluated the customer satisfaction of the experience on that street and got a lot of red, and they evaluated afterwards. So doing a baseline and evaluating impact, demonstrating impact is really, really critical. And you can see that there's a lot more green. People are much happier. People are more comfortable. Children are safer coming and going from school. This is in Tirana in Albania. And demonstrating impact is so critical. Having run the Walk 21 conference for the last 21, 23 years, early on, we didn't have any of this data, any of the information that we needed to impact on decisions, because evaluation informs decisions. And if we want to increase, this is a picture of the number of walking policies that are actually financed. Only 25% of walking policies that are written down have any financing behind them. They are evaluating more. We've got about a 50-50 percentage evaluation within those policies. But if we want to leverage financing, if we want to move the needle and get that, we need that data. We need to evaluate and demonstrate impact. So these are the tools and the frameworks that we're building, because then we can demonstrate success, we can demonstrate happy children, and the politicians can invite citizens to come and enjoy that space and to realize that this is a valuable, positive contribution to the community, because it's very quick and easy to default to the comfort of a car and forget the joy of interaction and engagement on our livable streets. I want to just talk also, what's really interesting to me, let me go back to this picture, is people often look at pictures like this and think, well, that's great. They're small, quiet, little streets. That's a few parked cars. They're very hard to move, but there are a few parked cars. This is where walking is easy. This is where walkability can be done. Yeah, it's okay. But what about if you look at this top picture here, right? This is 1975, an avenue in Barcelona. We can't do it tiny street by tiny street. I put this picture up here because it demonstrates that just as we all change to embrace the motor vehicle and allow it to occupy all the space in our cities, so too we can change back, right? You're seeing it happening in Paris right now. People say, oh, we don't want to change. We're scared of change. How do we change behavior? All the time. We are changing our behavior all the time. It's just how consciously or how rapidly or how constructively that we are doing that. So this is one example that Paul Lecroix shared with us at the conference that we just had in Lisbon. And I particularly wanted Paul to come and speak to talk about change at scale, not small street by small street. Those are very important. That little crossing on a side street on the way to school is highly valuable. And we must do all of those small interventions, but we must tackle it at a scale as well. And we had some great presentations of how to improve things around big box stores, how to translate highways, and not translations like in Seoul, where they took out the entire viaduct and freeway and restored the river, but still allowing for vehicle movement, but improving the quality of experience for all modes to travel in that city. It's possible, it can happen. And as you can hear from what Arlinda said earlier, putting together all of this process in place and over time can bring that change to our cities. But where to start for walking? If you're sitting there going, yeah, great, but where shall I start in my city? And we have to start where we get some of those real benefits from investment in walkability so that you can grow that momentum. And in a walkable city, always start where you get those concentrations of people. So people start in the retail centres. We must go around schools, make it safe for our children to have that freedom to run and play and be active on their way to schools, but also around our healthcare facilities, around our parks, around our employment zones, and most connected back to Arlinda is around our transport hubs. The fiscal viability of public transport depends on better walking and cycling and public space within that ecosystem. People have to be able to get to the public transport. The public transport journey starts at your front door, not at the door of the bus. And we must imagine that those commuter catchments are part of the entire system that we're investing in. And that's a lot of the work we're doing now is this relationship with those two modes, active mobility and public transport. And we've got that represented from very sprawly cities like Washington, D.C., when they wanted to improve their ridership on their metro system. They invested in walking to their stations. Tianjin in China, they had nobody riding the metro. Everyone was still sitting in congested traffic until they improved the walkability around their stations. So the connection between active and public transport is really critical. We did a policy brief last year as part of the PEP process, looking at some of those case studies and the importance of that integration. And we're currently working on a program across the region you see in the map, which will feel very familiar to some of you, and working with improving the catchments for active mobility to access public transport. We can't just improve the buses and the bus lanes. All of that has to be done as well. It's no small package, but we have to do those connections as well. And we'll be working in about 8 cities across this region to support them with the app to improve the connections to public transport. And I think I'm nearly finished. And I'm going to finish with an invitation. Our conference our 25th Walk 21 conference is going to be in Albania next year in Tirana. And in October in their beautiful pyramid building and around the city looking at the walkability. And I think it's so prescient. It's time for walking in this context. It's politically, there's been so many arcs around how we move and how we develop our cities, but in the ambition that this city has and the pressures on space, we're really excited to be there and to be building the conversation. So I invite you all to join us 6 to 10 October next year. Come and let's extend this conversation. We talk about all of these things and more, and we would really welcome your participation. Thank you for the time today, Darini. And Aditi, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I think it's a really exciting time to be bringing together fantastic bus priority, Arlinda, and also the walking agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn, for sharing all the work that you're doing. Just to summarize a little bit, I think firstly, I really loved how you reframed walking. As you said, it's not a new concept for us, but something much more exciting and appealing to embrace if done the right way. The visuals you shared again was so powerful and really showing the impact of our choices and decisions that we make on our daily routines. Also, how the quality of space is such a big factor in citizens making a decision around taking up healthier practices of walking. I think something I really resonate with is your thoughts on NDCs and how there needs to be a stronger commitment to walking, and also that there is a big gap between policies, citizen needs, and various efforts across various levels of stakeholders, and that there should be more collaboration and communication between these efforts. And like I said, it was really, really exciting to see your work spanning across different levels, international, city, also to see the projects that you shared, also about the app. And we also actually have a question in the chat in relation to the Walkability app, which is that who are the policymakers looking at the data from this app? Do the local governments or national governments even have the time to sort of deep dive into this? And this question is from Alberto. It's great if you can address it in a quick response.
Yeah, let me just pick up on that. Thank you very much. I think it's a good question, but I will actually share with you that one of the first places we used the app was in Dublin, because the national government commissioned a study which found that to look at the impact of mobility for women, they'd never done it before. And Alinda mentioned the gender dimensions of transport, and they did a report called In a Woman's Shoes, and they couldn't work out why women were not catching the local tram system. So the national government commissioned us to use the app to understand why this brand new surface tram system wasn't being used by women. And it was really revelatory around how they designed it, how women accessed it, and how women felt coming and going from the tram, not on the tram, in the surrounding access and points that they had. And so what was really interesting was that the national government then said, okay, great, we're going to support to improve this because we've got this gender agenda. And they called a meeting with the local authority to do that, and the local authority didn't want to get involved. So it's not always the local government or via the national government. So these things are depending on where the momentum is. In Ireland, the national government is investing a lot in walking and cycling at the moment, enabling local municipalities to do more for active mobility. So in terms of that broader reporting, we have worked with Cairo, we've worked in cities across Africa, we collect the data and prepare reports, and we'll be doing that with the A2P2 project, developing up short reports for those local municipalities so that they can learn about those experiences around those public transport hubs and come and make interventions that make a meaningful difference and address the concerns of people using them.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn, for your response. I see that there are more questions coming in the chat, requesting everybody to drop their questions there. We will take them up after the panel discussion. Since we're running slightly behind, I will now invite both Bronwyn and Arlinda to join me for a quick panel discussion. So if the host can spotlight both speakers, great. Thank you. So, like I said, really insightful presentations from the both of you, and I have many questions ranging across various topics. But to begin with, I would like to ask the both of you a simple but a really big question, which is cities everywhere are trying to become safer, greener, and more inclusive. What do you think are the biggest barriers to making this happen, and how can cities overcome them? Any experiences from the work that you have done so far? Maybe we start with Arlinda and then passing it on to Bronwyn.
Oh, very good question. I stepped out of architecture and urban planning school 20 years ago, and I see this car dependency urban planning policies still ongoing. I think one of the biggest barriers is this, that we still plan, invest, and build for cars. Switching or shifting this focus to prioritize human scale, I saw in Bronwyn's presentation, I love that also. Prioritizing people, green spaces, active transport modes, needs huge political will. Huge political will, because change, systematic real change is not easy. Not easy when you are part of development country, when you are part of a capital that has rapid urbanization growing, and of course, the other side of the medal, community buy-in. I think that these two are the biggest, it's like just not a barrier, but also potential. I always see it like this. It's in one side it's a barrier, in the other side it's a potential to use it. If there is political will, everything can be done. Of course, all this is a very, very challenging to achieve, but overcoming these barriers can bring a very good cross-sectorial, cross-institutional partnership, can uncover a lot of financial lending, financing, and many things. We have seen this in other cities, in other municipalities, when all these stars line up and something great happens. And also very important is actively involved in the community in the decision making early on in the process, informing them about what's going on, what changes are going to be, if these are aligned with their vision and all that, listening to them, and of course, listening to the professional side, to the technical side. What municipalities can do is incentivize public transport, awareness campaign, behavioral changes to get the community buy-in. And what I said also in the presentation is gradually start implementing pilot projects. Because I've seen this in other municipalities, they just do strategies, and they don't start with small projects. Doing small projects that are interconnected in between each other is better than not doing nothing at all. This would demonstrate that the political agenda is towards better cities, greener cities, and a more inclusive urban environment. Thank you.
Thank
Can I
you,
jump in?
Arlinda. Yes, please.
Yeah, everything you said, Alinda, everything was and what's a really interesting thing is to understand how deep the system is geared to prioritize motor vehicles. So every time a transport system or a transport project gets funding, it goes through an appraisal process. So the cost benefit analysis, the value of that system, they have in place all of these models and systems to evaluate and make decisions about the cost benefit of doing that project. Those systems are all fundamentally built on an assumption of motorized travel. So that we value time savings over time spent. So when you think about a health model, time spent is actually the valuable thing. To spend time being active, to spend time, social time is time spent. Travel time, because time is money, because we don't want to waste time sitting in traffic. So therefore, time savings is the fundamental principle of evaluating a transport project. And so therefore we see expansion of road space, expansion of highways, millions poured into a single junction so that we can have a slip lane or a flyover or something like this. This is the traditional response to congestion. So when we start peeling back, where is that car culture bias? It goes right through all of the systems. Now, there's some really great work has been done to bring the cost benefit analysis framework to walking and cycling in a transport context, not just a health context. The health stuff, the heat tool, health economic impacts of active travel, that's been done. They're very, very valuable, but in a transport context, that work hasn't been done. But we also need to look at the decisions, and buses suffer the same thing when you're competing with car transport appraisal systems. And Wales is a great place if people want to look up. Wales has brought in a new system for appraising transport schemes, and road infrastructure is evaluated against all of the other transport infrastructure and the principles of sustainability. And they did some analysis of the 58 projects that they had on their books, and only 18 got through the new system. Road widening, road building was the solution in only 18 instead of 58 of those transport needs there. So we need to peel back to those absolute systems. It's happening in some of the banks. World Bank is doing some good work on looking at cycling and the value of cycling infrastructure. So we must not think it's just about asking the community to change. It's just about asking the politicians to be tougher, because it goes all the way into the models that they use to make decisions about how we design our cities. Don't underestimate the financial power of the car industry and sustaining, their place in the system. That's a given, okay? So we have to come up with different ways. And I think what Arlinda said about tactical urbanism allows people to remember and to feel the difference, to know what can be different, and to remember that when people say, "Oh, car is all about freedom," prioritizing car movement denies freedom of choice for children and old people, or the vast majority of people who are not drivers in our communities.
Thank you so much for both your insights. I have another question specifically for you, Bronwen. Based on your work at the Walk 21 Foundation, can you tell us a little bit about some practical steps that the cities can take to prioritize walking and encourage more people to choose walking as a part of their daily lives and daily commutes. I know you also covered some of it in the presentation, so you can
Sure.
also choose to deep dive in it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, identifying those priority zones we talked about, actually allocating budget, dedicating budget, saying we're going to spend 10%, we're going to spend 20% of our transport budget. Actually making those commitments would really liberate some of the money that people would need. But given the things we've already talked about, I want to mention an experience I had when we were working in Almaty in Kazakhstan. I went there with UNDP a few years ago on a workshop with Yelena and team looking at this issue. And I left the hotel to go for a walk around the city, just as you would. And there had a wayfinding sign near a crossing on a busy road that had 6 lanes this way and a slip lane coming in. I walked up to look at the sign and I was approaching the crossing, the pedestrian crossing on the road. And as I came near to the pedestrian crossing, I was looking at the sign, 6 lanes of traffic came to a stop to let me cross the road. I was so shocked. I was like, because I'm not used to that happening in Central Asia or in Asia or in many countries in the world. There's fewer countries that do that where the traffic has that. I was so shocked, and they'd all come to a stop, including the slip lane. So I had to cross the road. I couldn't read the sign because I thought they'd all stop for me. So I crossed the road. I walked away, and I thought, is that a one-off? Let me try that again. So I approached back to the junction from the other side, and they stopped again. I was really stunned. So when I went back and I said to Yelena, I said, what's going on out there? What happens? This is amazing. I literally approached the crossing and the traffic stops and lets me cross the road. In Canada, when we used to do this, cars would stop, but they'd offer us a lift because they were worried about, why we were walking, because they never saw anybody walking. Anyway, they said the thing what they'd done 12 months of education and enforcement. They actually brought about a cultural shift of recognition that people crossing the road was important, that cars had a responsibility and an enforced responsibility to stop to allow people to cross the road. So that combination of education and enforcement actually brought about a cultural shift in a city as diverse as Almaty and as, on roads as big as some of those roads were. And it was a real lesson in doing two things, a sustained enforcement and education campaign over time and shifting that sense of perspective. So I just wanted to share that as a illustration for that question.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear that cities are taking such efforts in making this a public practice. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Arlinda, I would now have a small question for you. This is also coming based on the work that you shared, especially around urban portfolios. So in your experience with urban portfolios, and specifically in reimagining transport and commute, how important is it for local governments, communities, international organizations, and any other stakeholders or actors to collaborate and work together? And if you have any sort of ways to do it in a positive manner.
Oh, collaboration is crucial. Reimagining, not transforming, reimagining transport is a huge stake for each municipality, not just specific municipality, no matter the size, no matter financial support, no matter many things. So this collaboration in between institutions, sectors, in between local government, as I mentioned, we see a lot of urban agglomeration around the world. So there is no physical boundary between one city to the other city. You don't feel it, you don't see it. So you cannot plan for one city just because there are two different municipalities. So you have to integrate all this in between. You have to think, for example, if a specific municipality is planning for reimagining their transport, they have to think also for the community which is in the other municipality, but it's as a physical boundary of one urban area. International organizations and other stakeholders can just support this process with technical expertise, with complex processes, with testing innovation, Local governments bring the regulatory authority, and the international organizations, those other stakeholders can bring, can unfold the knowledge of from the local community, can provide community insights, can test solutions in innovative solutions into practical examples, and all that. That can also contribute to technical resources, expertise, a broader perspective of other successful case studies. Of course, a shared vision, create bankable projects, which is very important when the municipalities or specific city wants to take a loan and all that. Drive innovative initiatives. For example, we are working also with the municipality of Pristina in another project to test behavioral changes. We were analyzing municipal staff patterns, travel patterns, to understand why they travel with car, where do they park, and all that. If we can support with daily tickets and all that. So it's not just this, but also equitable and effective solutions. What is very important, and what I understood working with urban portfolios and all that, and also with municipalities, is working in silos. Working in silos can lead to fragmented and short-term solutions. So this is the main spice of international organizations, or also from the benefit from the portfolio approach, is to ensure a holistic approach that brings the challenges that municipalities face, not just bottom up, but also from the national level, financial, institutional, private sector, and everything, but also can create a greater impact among the community.
Great. Thank you so much. And yes, agreed on the point that we all need to work across silos to really make change happen. I have one final question to the both of you, and then we will move on to the Q&A. So given that public transport, walking, cycling are often seen as separate issues, they are not seen to be a part of the same ecosystem. And can you share with us from your experience one tip on how cities bring these together? How can they create more connected and sustainable transportation systems for improving everyday lives of people? This time we start with Arlinda and then to Bronwyn.
Did I mute myself now? Oh, creating different modes, integrating these modes, and creating easy to use, shifting, interconnected transport hubs. So let me explain this. Yes, usually why the walkability, cycling, and car routes and car infrastructure and bus infrastructure are seen as separate is because they have spatially different needs. For example, a person needs 50 centimeters of space, 50 by 50. A bike needs 2 meters with 60 centimeters. A car needs at least 2.5 to 5 meters. So this has has created a mentality that just because they have spatial different needs, they are not creating also huge and more infrastructural complications and challenges. So this integration in between these modes, for example, if there are 2 or 3 already cycling paths, why not connect these paths to already other walkability, pedestrian, nice routes to walk, where, for example, if a street needs only to have more trees, so it's more pleasant to walk in the summer, it's more safer to walk during the night and all that, why not connect all this? And also what I also explained that municipality of Pristina has been planning to do this is shifting in between transport modes and creating this very easy and accessible. For example, if there is a ring road, that there is a e-bus that circulates all the time. If, for example, a new neighborhood doesn't need a big bus, why not involve a smaller bus or a van or something like that. Understand more of the patterns when this transport is more needed. Is it in the morning? Is it in the rush hours or after that? So it's just more about covering multiple modes, simplifying user experience, and encouraging people to use this combination of options. On the planning side, we should focus also on this improving streets, not just in terms of parking, lighting, and all these traditional requirements, but also feeling the perception of inhabitants, improving more greenery, more perspective or view, safety, and making the entire journey more pleasant and cohesive and user-friendly.
Thank you so much, Arlinda, for summarizing this so well. Bronwyn, over to you.
Wow, it's hard to follow. That was so comprehensive and captured so many of the points. I guess I'll try and add a couple of other ideas. One particularly that I learned from the people who did the changes to the bus system in London, where they did everything. They improved the routes, they improved the bus stops, they improved the quality of the buses, and they changed the ticket pricing. You said about make it easier, make it simpler. They flatlined ticket pricing so that it was much simpler for getting on and off the bus. They did the timetables, right? They did everything for the bus. Amazing shift in bus patronage. And then they went, oh, hang on a minute, the corridors that the buses are traveling in are not as good as they could be. So they started to look at the corridors and looking at the roads that the buses were traveling down and how people accessed it, because they wouldn't put in a crossing for pedestrians, because even though they're the passengers, because it would slow down the buses. And then they went, okay, well, we've done the corridors, we've done all of this. What else can we do? And then they realized, oh, we can do catchments. And so this was a massive change in London with the buses, and they were just starting to do catchments. I think there was a change of politics at that point, and I moved away from London anyway. But it was this comprehensive look at the system. And this is what I probably would say is that walking might be a small individual thing, but we must go big. We must go large. And it's fine to think we can do it piece by piece, but have a big idea, have a big plan, and either choose a single public transport route and do all of it. Make every single bus stop attractive, nice, comfortable, and easy for people to get to. Make where they get off the bus in the center of town a beautiful but walkable environment. Don't think I will do the bus and then one day we'll do the bus stops and then one day we'll do the access to that. I watched someone speaking the other day about implementing slow speed zones. You can't do that street by street. You must do that by neighborhood by neighborhood. Let's have ambition. Let's have scale for these modes. I mean, you talked about bike lanes. There's if you build a highway, but you leave a link of one, even 10 meters out of a major highway, you don't have a highway until you've made that link. So I really think be bold and go big with this idea and really invest in the idea strongly so people get that full sense of what the shift would look like and then that can generate and grow ambition for more in their community. Don't be half-hearted.
Thank you so much. Don't be half-hearted. I think that's something we all should take away. But given that we have around 12 minutes left before we end our call, I will now move on to the Q&A section of our discussion today. I see that there are some really interesting questions in the chat by Alberto. So I would ask Alberto if you'd like to unmute yourselves and ask the questions to our speakers.
Can I just jump in before Alberto? Sorry, Alberto, because I've actually seen one of your questions is what are catchments? I'm really sorry. Let me clarify that for you straight away. So the catchment is the area around a stop or station that the design standard is that people will travel to get there. So around a bus stop, it's around 400 or 500 meters in a circle. And that's the area, like the zone from which people will walk to that bus stop. For bicycles, it's a bit larger. And when they do trains, they bring in car travel as well. And they identify where they're saying they do it for schools, like where in the surrounding area. It's the area around a place that you can draw your passengers or your customers from?
Radius, it's more covering radius.
Noted, and thanks to all of you for like really great presentations. So I actually have a lot of questions, so feel free to move to somebody else. I don't I regret monopolizing your time and attention. My questions are: one, can you talk a bit about the possibility of converting these walkability and bikeability policies into carbon credits? As it's just something I'm thinking about, and I know nothing about it, so I would be grateful for any learning. Question two is a bit more far-fetched, and is this idea that you see in Western Europe as there is this new boom in slow tourism and slow traveling, even internationally. And now there's even a network, like this European network of bicycle highways that also pedestrians use, and you can basically travel across the EU now without, leaving your bicycle. And this enables new stuff. It's not necessarily urban mobility in a strict sense, so feel free to ignore this if you feel it's out of scope. And the question three would be, could I ask you both to comment about how electric bicycles might be changing the landscape? I have anecdotal evidence, plenty of that, but I would like to hear the experts. Over.
Shall I jump in? Yeah, shall I jump in quickly? On the carbon credits, it's definitely a conversation, and some of the conversations are looking at things like footpath bonds and ways of measuring the value of investment in walking infrastructure and cycling infrastructure. I'm not deep in the conversation, but it's just so you know, it is definitely happening, because of course, when you talk about reducing emissions, we don't have emissions to reduce. So we have to have a different way of measuring the impact that we are having in the system and how we can support that. On the long distance routes, I dropped a note in there already that in London, they do a network of quiet ways to invite people to use some of those sort of nicer, more attractive walk places to walk. But you raise a really good point, which is actually that a lot of people in rural communities around the world are still having to walk or choosing to walk, that walking is not just an urban environment necessity. For cycling, the Pan-European cycling work is phenomenal, and they have longer reach. But it is certainly an approach that can be adopted in cities. And so A, we must pick up rural movement for walking and cycling anyway, but B, the approach of those routes. In London, we've got a lot of strategic walking routes. It's another single idea I was thinking of for the last question, is do some really good strategic walking routes so that people that start off recreational and then over time can become people's utility walking routes as well. So these are viable options in an urban environment. Not all urban environments are just about high volume streets and busy traffic. And lastly, I don't have a lot to say about e-bikes because basically that's a motorized version. There's no health benefit of e-mobility, but they are cleaner, they're smaller, they occupy less space. So there's lots of reasons to have them. And they're part of the mix, but they're part of this sort of tension between sustainability, safety, activity that we're all trying to find the magic answer to, and they'll continue to be part of that. It's a massive conversation. You'll have to have another talk just about that topic.
I will go on also very, very quickly. We are still figuring out the carbon footprint and switching carbon measures for buildings. So I'm not deep into the conversation with the bike, so I will not go into something I'm not aware about. And the second question around long distance bike routes, I think they are amazing. And they are the linkage between the urban and rural areas, and they should not be seen as something like that. It's much easier for sure for municipalities to implement routes like that because you have free space that has not been built, so it's much easier in terms of spatial constraints. It's going to be cheaper in terms of finances. But I've seen very, very bad cases when they build the bikes immediately along the highway, and then you have catastrophe in terms of biking. So I would, as Brohan said in the beginning, this should be a very comprehensive network of bike routes. They should be first analyzed very well. Yeah. And a lot of smoke while you bike. But also it has to be very comprehensive in terms of first to help rural areas connect with the urban area. For example, workers, students use the bikes, but also for pleasure. I think there's a huge potential, not just challenge. I always try to see things as if this is a challenge, where's the potential side? I see a lot of potential, especially for hilly countries like Kosovo, Macedonia, Montenegro, and there have been a lot of incentives and pilot projects, but still they are in the initial phase. I see, but and these things can be done with not so huge investments because you don't need a lot of infrastructural investments, but some maps, some good a good mobile app and all that, and you can use all that to slow tourism. So, and on the third, as long as bikes are used to go from A to B, they don't require a lot of space. They are a better option for people towards a car. Why not? I'm pro that. If, for example, someone doesn't want to use the bike because it's lazy or doesn't have the time, for example, it has to cross 20 kilometers a day, and he can cross, or he or she can cross that distance for 20 minutes. Why not? So yeah.
Thank you so much.
For the questions. I think you have another one.
But I would have to be the timekeeper here and pause this discussion. Thank you so much, Alberto, for your really insightful questions. And it was also really good to have this discussion, bringing in different perspectives. And of course, thank you, Arlinda and Bronwyn, for not just your presentation and sharing your work with us, but also engaging in a dialogue to really talk about how can we actually work with such concepts in reality and overcome challenges that many of us face in this room today. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining. I will hand it over now to Darini for some last announcements and closing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I think it was a very insightful conversation in talking, but also in the chat. If you want to look at the chat, I know a couple of you shared a nice resource. I know Stanislav shared the resource on creating a safe walking route in Lima, so feel free to have a look at that video because that looked great. And then Alberto also shared in Brussels the Randonnée Verte path that goes around the city, which is also a nice resource to go over. So thank you once again for joining, and thank you for staying until the very end. I really appreciate that more people stayed until the very end. The recording of this event and the presentations, because are going to be made available to you. The speakers have been very generous in allowing to share the content with all of you. So you're all registered to this event. You will all receive an email when the recording is out. Stay tuned. We have more talks coming. So we are planning to do 2 more talks by the end of the year. Because you registered to this, you will get an invitation by email, a calendar invitation, and an email as well. If you want to see what we are up to when it comes to Urban Talks, follow us on social media. It's always on LinkedIn. It's usually a day or 2 before the talk happens. Thank you, everyone, translators as well. We did a fantastic job in presenting this event in 4 different languages. I really appreciate your work. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.